5 years earlier, Ethan Cole had been one of the brightest senior engineers at Bennett Technologies, a billion-dollar company led by the brilliant young CEO, Amelia Bennett. Quiet, hard-working, and respected by everyone. Ethan never chased promotions or recognition. His greatest joy was returning home each evening to his wife, Sarah, and their newborn daughter, Lily. But life changed overnight when Sarah passed away unexpectedly after a sudden illness. Devastated, Ethan resigned from Bennett Technologies without saying goodbye to anyone. He sold his apartment, moved to a small town hundreds of miles away, and devoted every waking moment to raising Lily alone. He ignored countless emails from former colleagues and quietly built a simple life as a freelance technician, believing that staying away from the corporate world was the only way to protect his daughter from a life of constant pressure. Amelia often wondered why one of her most talented employees had vanished without explanation. But after years passed, she accepted that some people simply chose different paths. 5 years later, Amelia's closest friends convinced the work-obsessed billionaire CEO to finally try a blind date. Reluctantly, she agreed, letting her assistant arrange everything. The reservation was made at one of the city's finest restaurants. Neither person would know the other's identity until they met. Meanwhile, Ethan had also been persuaded by his elderly neighbor to give life another chance. At first, he refused, insisting that his only priority was Lily. But after his daughter smiled and told him, "Daddy, Mommy would want you to be happy again," he finally agreed. After dropping Lily off with her grandmother, Ethan arrived at the elegant restaurant. Wearing a neatly pressed navy blue shirt and dark trousers, he felt completely out of place among the luxury decor, crystal chandeliers, and wealthy guests. But he reminded himself it was only dinner. Sitting quietly at the reserved table, he waited nervously while rain gently tapped against the enormous windows, overlooking the glowing city streets. A few minutes later, Amelia entered the restaurant wearing an elegant cream-colored designer pantsuit, carrying a small leather handbag. The hostess smiled and pointed toward Ethan's table. Amelia walked confidently across the room until Ethan looked up from the menu. The moment their eyes met, both froze in complete disbelief. Ethan immediately stood, his face turning pale. Amelia whispered his name before she could stop herself. "Ethan?" He couldn't believe the woman. Standing before him was the CEO he had spent 5 years avoiding. Amelia stared at him with a mixture of shock, confusion, and relief before quietly saying the words neither of them expected to hear that night. "You're my blind date." The restaurant suddenly felt silent. Memories of the past flooded both of their minds. Amelia had spent years wondering why Ethan disappeared without a single explanation, while Ethan had spent those same years believing leaving without saying goodbye had been the kindest choice. Neither of them knew that this accidental reunion would uncover a secret hidden for 5 long years, one that would change both of their lives forever. For several long seconds, neither Ethan nor Amelia spoke. The elegant restaurant faded into the background as they stared at one another across the candle-lit table. Amelia slowly sat down, still unable to believe that the man who had disappeared from her company and her life was now sitting in front of her as her blind date. Ethan looked uncomfortable, ready to leave. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't know it was you." "I'll go." Amelia gently stopped him. "Please, don't disappear again." There was something in her voice that made Ethan sit back down. Dinner arrived, but neither of them touched the food. Amelia finally asked the question she had carried for 5 years. "Why did you leave without saying goodbye? Did I do something wrong?" Ethan lowered his eyes before answering. "No. You were the best boss I ever had." He paused, taking a slow breath. "The day after my wife died, everything changed. I couldn't focus on work anymore. Every meeting reminded me of the future I had planned with her. I had a newborn daughter who needed me more than any career ever could. I thought disappearing was easier than watching everyone pity me." Amelia listened silently, as tears gathered in her eyes. She had spent years believing Ethan had left because he hated the company or blamed her leadership. She never imagined he had been carrying so much pain alone. Ethan smiled sadly as he took out his phone and showed Amelia a recent picture of Lily, now a bright and cheerful 5-year-old with the same smile her mother once had. She's my whole world, he said proudly. Every choice I've made has been for her. Amelia looked at the photo and couldn't help smiling. She admitted something she had never told anyone. After you left, I kept your office exactly the way you left it for almost a year. I thought maybe one day you'd come back. Ethan looked surprised. Amelia laughed softly through her tears. You probably never noticed, but I admired you long before you resigned. You treated everyone with respect, from interns to security guards. You never cared about titles. Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. It was Lily. He answered immediately with a warm smile. Hi, sweetheart, Amelia listened as Ethan patiently helped his daughter solve a homework question over the phone before reminding her to brush her teeth and listen to Grandma. When the call ended, Amelia realized she wasn't looking at the talented engineer she once knew. She was looking at an extraordinary father whose greatest achievement wasn't his career, it was the little girl waiting for him at home. As they left the restaurant together, rain had stopped, leaving the city streets glowing beneath the lights. Amelia walked beside Ethan and quietly admitted she had spent years building a billion-dollar company while sacrificing almost every personal relationship she had. Ethan smiled gently. Success means very little if you have no one to share it with. His words stayed with her. A few days later, Amelia visited Ethan's modest home carrying coloring books and gifts for Lily instead of business contracts. The little girl welcomed her with an innocent hug that instantly melted Amelia's heart. Over the following months, their friendship slowly grew into something neither of them had expected. Amelia never asked Ethan to return as an employee. Instead, she offered him a flexible consulting role that allowed him to remain the devoted father Lily needed. 1 year later, surrounded by close friends and family in a quiet garden ceremony, Ethan and Amelia exchanged wedding vows while Lily proudly walked down the aisle holding both of their hands. Looking at his daughter, Ethan realized he had spent years hiding from the past, believing happiness had ended with heartbreak. Instead, life had quietly been preparing a second chance he never expected. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories don't begin with perfect timing. They begin with two broken hearts finally finding each other when they least expect it. Story lesson. The right people will never judge your past. They'll understand it. True love begins with honesty, kindness, and respect. Sometimes, the second chance you never expected becomes the greatest blessing of your life.